Talking to your parents about money can be a difficult conversation. No way around it. But there's many different critical conversations that you really need to have, and at different stages. I would argue, as a parent, I hope my children ask me questions as opposed to let me erode whatever nest egg I've been able to build. But if I don't talk to them about their money today, they're probably not going to talk to me about my money tomorrow. What do we do to make sure that this does not go awry? Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Dean Huddleston.
We're going to take this in a 4-stage attack: young adults, engaged adults, married adults, all the way through talking to the parent, talking to the adult. So, Dean, we both had young children. You have young grandchildren. I don't have those. I have a young grand dog who I don't think would listen anyhow. I love Sadie to death, so that's not even fair, and Buddy too. But as a young adult, what would you tell your daughter if she were sitting here today and she was 18 or 19 years old about money?
I would tell her everything that my parents didn't tell me. My parents were wonderful people. They weren't financially savvy. So I would be telling her, honey, no matter what you do, time is your friend and it can be your enemy. So you need to start saving for your future now. It will make a tremendous difference for you in the years to come. You need to save the right amount of money out of your paycheck. You always want to put yourself first in those kind of situations. Only you are going to take care of you when it comes to your financial well-being at this time, and you need to put that first.
Good. So what I heard you say is younger is better, right?
Younger is much better.
The sooner, and that's compound interest. Einstein wasn't there on his deathbed, but he allegedly said, not sure what the 7 wonders of the world, but I'm pretty sure the 8th is compound interest.
Yes, he did.
It is fascinating. He used to have a chart that showed if you saved money between 20 and 25 and then didn't save another dime, or you started at 26, and I believe it showed either 8 or 10% compound interest, something that would be illegal for us as fiduciaries to ever show anyhow. But that was, the early 90s when I saw this chart, and 8 to 10% might have been more legitimate in terms of some of the interest rates. But the bottom line is somebody who saved from 26 all the way to 60 or 65 had less money than the person who saved 20 to 25 and then stopped.
Yeah.
Right? So compound interest, beautiful thing. Save all that you can do. Tax diversification, right? Make sure that you can put money into Roth IRAs because there's going to be a point in time when they either may not exist or your income is going to be too high to do it. And you have to have that the commitment, and that's what Dean hit at the end, the commitment to the percentage that you're saving, right? So some people will talk to you in amounts. I will always try to get you to think in terms of percentages, right? So, you may make $100 a week, you may make $1,000 a week, and somebody's going to say you need to save 25 or 50. I would not do that. I would save it in a mindset of a percentage. And then as long as you commit to that percentage through your working career, you will probably be okay. The percentage you need to save is lower the younger that you start because of the compound interest that Dean and I talked to. Make sure that you're committed to you. Right? And that's where I said when you bring somebody else in, you want to make sure that whatever habits you're building today are not, can't be taken away by somebody else or swayed by somebody else, which gets us to the engaged conversation. This is where you need to have some conversations about what is going on. So, Dean, tell us what you think about debt.
You should be afraid of it. It will drag you down for the rest of your life if you're not cautious of it. So debt is something that at times can be necessary, but it should be part of the plan and not just something that you simply take on a daily basis and think, I'll just keep borrowing money the rest of my life.
Yeah. So I think there's a difference between debt and leverage, right? Being able to pay off your house doesn't mean you have to pay your house off when the interest rate's as low as it is. Borrowing money to go to Disney is probably not the best idea. College debt, I will leave alone, but what I will tell you that, conversations that I didn't have and didn't think about are 2 that I'm getting ready to share. Just because your family doesn't have student debt doesn't mean that they didn't marry somebody else who did. Right. And then you've got to factor that into the equation. But what I've seen is when people are getting engaged, and, I've been married for 33 years. Dean's been married a little longer. So I can't remember all these kind of conversations. I'm sure Barb and I talked about whether we would have kids. Can't tell you for sure. I'm sure we talked about, some of the things that I wanted to accomplish in the world, because, It's the way it was. I'm sure we talked about her graduating from Ball State and being a teacher because that's the way it was. I do not remember having a conversations about our commitment to savings. Right. So if I were to go back in my way back machine, I would have hoped my mom and dad would have said what Dean and I just said. You need to be committed to saving a certain percentage of your income. Right. And when you're sitting down to get engaged with somebody whose only interest is not having debt, they may not have an interest in a particular amount of savings. And when you're putting 15 or 20% into your 401k every year because you believe that's an important habit that you've developed, no different than going to the gym and eating right or going to church on Sunday, whatever you believe is right for you, you don't want to have anybody take that away from you. And I see that happen a lot inside of savings because there's so many people that have different viewpoints and different perspectives, right? Absolutely. Now, I will tell you this, you can overdo it. I've got a friend here in town. It's a family we take care of. He's never told me, but he's told my buddy. And my buddy tells me, that when they're out doing something, he tells them how I saved their marriage. And it's because he was so committed to saving. He was saving more than allowed her to have a life. And it was because they didn't have that conversation. He had his habit, and hell or high water was going to continue on with his habit. I get it. But there is a point in time when you have to recognize the success you've had and adjust accordingly, especially when you haven't had the conversations. And
I've had one of those conversations last week with a family that came in.
They are critical conversations. But now we're married, Dean, not you and I. But there's Pam and Barb, and they're not married either, but they're married to us.
Yep. They're fortunate.
I feel very fortunate. I will tell Pam you feel fortunate. And we'll keep that along. So now that we're married, right? So now there's a couple questions that you should be talking to about your married children. And that is one, yes, you want to buy a house. The house will never be bigger than what you need it to be while you're raising kids, and will probably be fine later on, right? And that's okay. Do it in your own time, but you need to continue to save for retirement so that you can make choices, right?
Absolutely.
Now, here's the one thing I will tell you about 401k plans that goes along with what I told you as a young adult, Dean. I'm talking to your inner self now.
Gotcha.
Your outer self, your younger self, whatever that would be. The only thing I like about a 401k over an IRA is that it gives you the ability to save a percentage of income. And I'm so adamant about that percentage not being sporadic. It needs to be specific, it needs to be planned, and it needs to be continuous. And the only time that strategy will fail you is when you start to make a phenomenal sum of money toward your later years. So if you saved money from 25 to 50, making $50,000 a year, and all of a sudden between 50 and 55, you're making $500,000 a year, it doesn't work quite as well, right? Just keep that in mind in terms of where you are. But all of this sets you up, hopefully, for a conversation that you want your children to have with you, right? And I can't tell you that I have the solution to this, but I've identified the problem, right? And I am persistent, if nothing else, in terms of trying to get this stuff done. And again, I'm going to tell you, I don't have all the solutions to this. There's a really an interesting book called Loon Shots that you may want to read sometime if you like inquisitive stuff. Loon Shot explains why big businesses do nothing but to protect the franchise and have to go out and buy smaller businesses, right? And why little companies end up having all of the big things. This is especially true in the bio arena, all right? Because the big companies can't take the risk, and the little companies are only hit 1 out of 20 times or 1 out of 50. But if they hit, boy, they hit. And then you've got the Pfizers of the world or Lilly's that are able to come in and buy them and do what they are. That happens, inside of a normal process of going on. A loon shot is where you have to protect the company, right? We have about 1,200 families we represent. It's real close to that number, could be a little bit less. And about $650 million as of the time of when we did this show originally, back in June of 2021. And, it's important to understand that I have to protect those families. At the same time, I feel obligated, Dean, to protect them, not just today, but their financial journey and the families that are around them. Yeah. And I believe very much, and if you missed the first segment of the radio, where we talked about trusts matter more than one might think. You can go back and listen to that. You can find it at considerthisprogram.com, our website, yourlifeafterwork.com, or anywhere you listen to you download podcasts on to Consider This Program. 10% of us drop dead statistically, right? It could be a car wreck, could be a stroke, could be a heart attack. Lost a 44-year-old, I guess, this last week. Just kind of, tough stuff can happen, right? But the majority of us fade away. And what happens inside most of your legal documents is if you're outside of a trust, you've got what's called a power of attorney, right? Where somebody has to invoke that power. Inside of a trust, somebody has to invoke that power, and then the successor trustee takes over. But when they invoke that power, it usually says you have to go in front of a doctor to produce that or prove that you are incapacitated, if you will, or in front of a judge to say that you're incompetent, right? And even though they interchange those words, and I do it a lot, they're different. Judge does one thing, doctor does another. But in 33 years, I have never seen anybody take their dad or their mom to the doctor to have that done. Now, if they've been institutionalized or if they're in a coma from a car wreck, you bet. But I've seen people take away car keys. I've never seen them do the other. And it's because of what I call the nuclear option, right? Meaning that, Dean, when you can no longer pay your bills, I'm taking over everything. So today you can decide where to vacation, where to invest, how much to give to your church, what you're going to buy your kids for Christmas, and tomorrow you get to do none of that, right? It just doesn't happen, and for very obvious reasons. People are, they just don't want to do it, right? So I've developed a concept called incremental incapacitation. We filed for the trademark on it to be able to get it done, but that's what I want to spend a lot of our career on. We're able to be, Financial Enhancement Group is able to be corporate trustees for people, corporate successor trustees or corporate trustees. And part of what we're adding into that is this conversation over incremental incapacitation that essentially says, when I can't do something, then take away this power, but don't take away them all. Now, I will tell you, this is not perfect. It is certainly not complete. It is going to be something that I'm going to work on, just like I've worked on Your Life After Work for 30 years. This is something that I'm going to work on for the next 20 or 30 to get it right. But it is important. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com or considerthisprogram.com. Learn more about the show. Call us, 800-928-4001. We look forward to meeting you.